Hello, good afternoon. My name is Willy Boykins. I am the Vigil rep, and I come to talk a little bit about why and how we can use the online RMA form. Did everybody get a goodie bag?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Selling new Vigils is not our only business. If you sell a new unit, there's a lot of other things that come with it. Like, for example, the battery replacement. Since 1 or 2 years, the airline transportation has forbidden us to transport any more spare batteries, so we now are obliged by that we have to get the full units back, shipped back. So we have to do the battery replacements in the company. We also have to the upgrading of the units. Now we came out with the new Vigil, the Vigil Quattro. People ask us, well, can we upgrade our older Vigil, our multi-mode, to Quattro? Yes, we can do that. Then that unit has to be sent in and we can upgrade it there. We have to deal with activations as well, of course. Sometimes people pull a little bit too low. Sometimes people's lives get saved, and we have to deal with that as well. Maintenance. Vigil maintenance is not mandatory by the company, but sometimes people ask for it, and since the beginning we've been offering it as well. Vigil 1 exchange for a new Vigil Quattro. The Vigil 1 batteries, we cannot get them from the factory anymore. The factory doesn't supply them anymore, doesn't fabricate them anymore. Plus the fact that the Vigil 1 is not upgradable, that made us decide that we do offer to exchange that Vigil 1 to our customers for a brand new Vigil Quattro if they pay 300 euros, which I think is a pretty good deal. And then the last thing, the general repairs. Sometimes people break their controller. A water landing, for example, a Vigil 2, for example. Vigil 2 is waterproof. But since in the beginning we allowed people to open the Vigils to change the battery or to change the cutter, and then sometimes it happened that that particular person didn't close the Vigil in a proper way again, then it happened that afterwards they landed in the water and that the Vigil had a problem. So for that reason we brought a service bulletin out that if you land with a Vigil 2 into the water, if you get in contact with the water, you need to send it back to the company for inspection before the next jump. So these things we all have to deal with as well. So for that course, we created an online form, the online form which looks like that here. You can find it at our website /RMA. Before you send in a unit, you always have to send that, fill in that complete form. It's easy and it gives us a lot of traceability. First thing you have to select is, of course, where you wanted to send it back, either to Belgium or the US. For the UK, it's pretty obvious, I think, that you're going to send it back to Belgium. Second thing, you're going to have to complete your address, the invoice address, and the customer's shipping address. If you want both the same, you just have to put that bottom up there and it will copy these data into here. If you want the invoice to be paid by the customer or vice versa, you can just fill in different addresses. Then concerning the unit you're going to have to send in, you can add up to 10 units per form. First thing you have to fill in is the serial number, of course. Then you can choose between general repairs, battery replace, with upgrade of the firmware, or an upgrade of the firmware without the battery, Vigil 1 exchange and an activation. Then the last thing you have to select here is either multi-mode is a 3-mode, or Quattro. Quattro is a 4-mode. It's the Pro, Student and Tandem, as we always had, plus the Extreme, which is for canopy piloting. So the general repairs, what can that be? Well, if there's a defect, if you have, for example, a control error, a cutter error, a water landing, controller damage or whatever, then the unit definitely needs to be sent back. So you fill that all in then. Don't forget to fill in your comments. Sometimes we get units in and your comments is not filled in, then we have to go looking for the problem, which is some waste of time then. Battery replace plus upgrade. It's mandatory to change the battery after 10 years. The batteries are guaranteed for 5 years minimum or 2,000 jumps. You do not have to change it after 5 years or 2,000 jumps. The batteries will probably last much longer than that. But it is mandatory to change them after 10 years. So after 10 years you have to send in that unit again to Belgium or to the US. What do you get for that? What do we do with your unit then? We will give it a full maintenance. Full maintenance, just like a brand new unit before it leaves the company. From controller to cutter, everything is checked. You get an upgrade on the newest firmware, newest software. Of course, you get the new battery. You do get a new controller as well. Since like 6 months, we have new controllers, which are even better waterproof than before. And you get an upgrade to Vigil Quattro. The Vigil Quattro is only possible from serial number 11,800 and up. Now that's just a little margin. That's not from Vigil 2. That's not possible to upgrade. So the whole package here is actually what some of our competitors offering as a maintenance. We offer all that for just 95 euros. So the fact that we now have to ship back the full unit does not have to be such a big disadvantage. You do get a big advantage, or the customer gets a big advantage by getting that whole maintenance package and the upgrade to Quattro for just 95 euros. If you want your unit to be upgraded to Quattro, and your unit is only like 4 or 5 years old, for example, and you're not due to a new battery, you can still get the full maintenance, the upgrade to the new software, the new controller, the upgrade to the Quattro, of course, which is actually the same package as the new battery, but without the battery. That's going to cost you 70 euros. If you say, I don't need that extra Quattro, I'm not using it, I don't want it, but I would like to have an upgrade, no battery, but just an upgrade and a full maintenance. You can get the full maintenance, the upgrade with the newest software. You keep your 3 modes. And what does that cost? That's just going to cost you shipping back. So it's actually practically free that you're going to get that full maintenance then. The Vigil 1 exchange, I just explained it to you, why we are doing this. So that's also a possibility that you have to fill into that form then. You fill in the form then, you send us, you will get, after sending in this RMA form, you will get contact from us and you will know what to do then. You will, in case of Vigil 1 for example, they will tell you you have to ship back the Vigil 1 to Belgium or to the US, and then after payment we will send you the brand new Vigil Quattro. If you have an activation, select activation here, and eventually what you want us to do with the unit after that, because we're going to give, if an activation comes in, we're going to give it a full maintenance and control as well. And we can upgrade it to Quattro if necessary as well. Please, again, like with general problems, fill in your comments. Let us know what happened. Sometimes it's a low pull, sometimes it's a life save, so we know at least in advance what we have to look for. Then, to send in that form, you have to scroll down, and then you can push the request RMA button. In the meantime, you will get an overview of all the possibilities that you can have and what eventually will be the cost of that. When you push the button, 10 seconds later you will get a confirmation on your website, on your browser, with thank you about sending in this RMA, and you will also get an email with a PDF form with an overview what you've sent in, and you will get an RMA number here. Now keep that RMA number well with you. If you have to do any correspondence, if you have to change anything or whatever, if you call the company or email them, let them know about that number as well. Then it's much easier for us to track down what it's about. So that was about the RMA form that we launched 3-4 months ago.
Great.
Okay. So air pressure and turbulences, what effect they have on AADs. Air pressure is defined as hectopascal, or inches of mercury in the American system. The air pressure here, for example, is approximately 1001, I think, or last year it was, or 2 years ago when I gave that first seminar here. The higher we go, the lesser air pressure we will get. So if we're gonna measure 200 meters above here, the air pressure will be 976 hectopascal or millibar than here. 1 millibar is about approximately 8 meters. Now, how does an AAD calculate the height and speed? Because the only two things we have is time and air pressure. And with these two, we have to calculate the altitude and speed. The visual, when you switch it on the ground, it will take the air pressure, and then it will go back to sleep for 32 seconds. 32 seconds later, it's going to wake up again, and it's going to take that air pressure again. If it sees that it's the same air pressure than 32 seconds ago, it knows that it's still on the ground, and it can go back to sleep for 32 seconds. And it will continue like that until you take off with an airplane. When you take off with an airplane and it wakes up after 32 seconds, it discovers that it's more than 90 feet or 150 feet. It depends on what serial number you have from a visual. It will consider that as airborne. It will know that it's airlifted and that it has to start working. From that moment on, it's going to start measuring 8 times a second. So every 8 times a second, it's going to calculate the difference between the last measurement and the current measurement. And then it can see the difference. It knows what altitude it is, and it can calculate the speed. So if one measurement is, for example, at 1800 meters, and a second later it measures 1750, then it knows that it's descending at 50 meters per second. Sounds pretty simple. This is a graph, like we just saw from the test jump. This is a real skydive. So we see the green line descent, the red line, the speed line. We see that the person exited at 8,100 feet, descended, has a nice stable skydive, and then you see a peak, which is the opening, and then the slowing down on the canopy. Now, we see an increase of speed when the parachute opens. Doesn't sound logic. How does it come? We're falling like this. The air pressure is everywhere correct. Everywhere we go, the air pressure is correct, except on our back. On our back, because we fall down, we create a burble. A burble is a low pressure zone. That low pressure zone will approximately, we can never tell sure, but approximately measure the same air pressure as 80 meters higher, or 260, 240, whatever feet higher. So imagine you're at 1,200 meters. The visual will think that you are at 1,280. Now you're going to open your parachute. You do this. So all of a sudden that visual comes into the more or less correct air pressure. So all of a sudden it's losing 80 meters. So first it thought it was at 1,280. Now it knows it's at 1,200. So all of a sudden 80 meters are gone. So that's why he thinks he's speeding up. He thinks this is going super fast here, so that's why you see that spike, which is actually a virtual spike. Now, let's look at a slightly different graph. Is this somebody that always opens his parachute? And then, no. This is the graph from a world champion freestyle. What does this guy do? Back layouts. So he brings his visual is in the burble. He does a back layout, comes out of that burble, gets into the burble again, does barrel rolls. Right here, he's probably putting that visual out of the burble. But if you bring that visual then back into the burble, what happens then? The opposite. So the visual thinks then that it's slowing down. So that's why you get these negative spikes. So you get quite a bit of variety there. I said that the visual is measuring 8 times a second. You can put points on those graphs as well. Every point you see is a measurement. Now, when does a visual activate? A visual will activate when the red line, the speed line here, is above this red line here. In this case, it's pro settings 115 feet per second. And at the same time, the green line goes underneath into this activation zone here, underneath that green line here. If you have a combination of those two, so you're going down too fast on a too low altitude, which is preset in the visual, then it will activate. The settings for visual are student 397 meters and all the rest there, which I think you all know. So in this case, for example, the speed is still above. The person didn't pull here. The green line goes into the activation zone here, underneath that green line here. The speed is still above there. What happens? Bingo. The unit activates. This is a real graph. So when the speed is under that red line, that speed, so his canopy opened here, and he only gets into the activation zone here, which is, and he clearly has a canopy right. It's not gonna, obviously not gonna activate there. If you've been, like here for example, if you've been underneath that red line, when you come over, when you, for example, when you would have been over the red line into this speed activation, if you would have come over there, it would not activate immediately. It needs 5 consecutive points from those 8 that I said just. So if he would have, if this would have been a swooper, for example, he would have gone very hard. He at least needs 5 consecutive points over that red line to activate. That is pretty important in the next case here, for example. It's not activating here yet. It activated here. What is this case? This is from a person in a 4-way team. The 4-way team tracks away the end of the skydive. Everybody opens his parachute. They're all fine, putting away their boosters, grabbing their sliders, and all of a sudden, boom, 2 of them get into a canopy collision. The one on the bottom is fighting, they manage to separate, but the one on the bottom, his canopy is completely unsteerable, so he decides to cut away. But what did he do before? He also loosened up his chest strap completely. So he cuts away, wants to go for his reserve, can't find his reserve because his reserve handle is right here now. It's not here anymore because he loosened his chest strap, so it's right, it's in the back now. So he can't find it. What's happening, and what's happening with, in a lot of cases when we have a spinning malfunction, for example, and we cut away, we get unstable. We get unstable, we get in our back. What are we trying to do? We get in our belly. What happens when you get into your belly? You get that negative spike here. So we said you need 5 consecutive points. He speeded up. He's got 1 point, then he turned into his belly on that moment. So it's not going to fire here. He speeded up again, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. It activated here on the 5th point. If you would have kept on rolling, of course it's going to keep on speeding up. It's going to activate, but there is a little bit of a delay there. So what I'm trying to say with this is, this is that spike where the unit fired. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 when it fired. Now this red line is at 35 meters per second. Yeah? So 5 points above that red line is going to activate. Now imagine if you would have been jumping in an extreme. An extreme, that line would have been here. Is going to fire here? No. You would have had to wait a second later probably to have that unit fire. Now this is a similar situation, but higher. This did not get to the activation altitude zone, but it gives you a good idea on what happens if a student, for example, gets unstable. In this case, if it would have been in student mode, it would have activated here at 562 meters, 2.4 seconds after the cutaway. Where if that would have been in pro settings, that would have been 511 meters, which is already 50 meters lower, or 1.4 seconds later. If that would have been in extreme, our extreme settings is 43. We do not want to go to 46, and that is with a reason, and this is one of the reasons. In extreme, it would have activated at 483 meters. If you look at the difference, it's quite impressive. Or 5.3 seconds after. Of course, this is a student, this unit was in student mode, but just to give you an idea, it would have been 46. We do have extreme 46s, but they are only and only for our top athletes. We do not sell these units. Only for world-class swoopers, they will get it. One of the reasons is that we've done a lot of testing with, we got about just all the world-class, all the top swoopers in the world are all jumping vigils. We've done tests with them. It's very, very difficult to get over the 40. It's almost impossible to get over the 43. These guys get over there, but normal jumpers, they never get over there. It's even very difficult for a normal jumper without extra weight to get even over the pro settings. Now, if you have this, now of course with the new generation of the Valkyries and the, what's the Icarus canopies? The Leias and stuff, that's a different story. I'm not going to judge that, but if you're jumping in velocity, for example, there's people that come to me and say like, hey Willie, I got this Katana 120 and I'm swooping it pretty hard and I need an extreme. I don't think so. I don't think so. Of course, we cannot tell people, no, you should not, because you never know. But if you do not need an extreme, there's no point in setting that unit into extreme, because you're losing safety there. You're throwing away safety. And the same thing goes for example, I once heard a jump master saying to his student, congratulations, you graduate your AFF, you can now switch your unit, your vigil, into pro. But he was still jumping that same canopy. There's no point. It's not dangerous. There's nothing's going to happen. But you have more safety if you stick to the same, to that same settings if you were before. If you're still jumping that big student canopy, you're not gonna get over 20 meters per second, unless you're really gonna. And I don't think students are gonna do that. So these are things you have to consider before you change the mode of your AAD.